Now, the most controversial picture playing in town right now just opened. It's Martin Scorsese's film, Taxi Driver. With a title like that, you might think the picture's about the high drama of being an inner-city hack operator. Well, forget it. This picture is concerned with violence. It's brutal. It's a love story that turns into an ugly nightmare. The picture was made by a young New York director, Martin Scorsese, whose other films, Who's That Knocking at My Door, Mean Streets, and Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, all have one thing in common. They're about contemporary people who are terribly frustrated with their lives to the point of violence. And so, too, with Taxi Driver. The taxi driver is played by Robert De Niro, who was so terrific as young Vito Corleone in The Godfather Part 2. De Niro plays a Vietnam veteran who's lonely and depressed, so he gets a job as a taxi driver. And he drives nights because he can't sleep anyway. And two important things happen. He gets disgusted with the ugly street life in Times Square in Harlem, and he also meets a beautiful girl, a spectacularly beautiful girl played by Sybil Shepherd. But he's so crude, the taxi driver, he ends up taking her on their second date to a porno movie. And right through that last scene, I was really loving Taxi Driver because up until that point, the relationship between De Niro and Sybil Shepherd has been electric. The scene where he picks her up in their very first date together are both funny and erotic. But that mood isn't going to last. This picture is going to rub our noses in violence like few films ever have. Anyway, Sybil Shepherd works in a political campaign office. Her candidate is running for president of the United States. And one of the film's many coincidences, De Niro, the taxi driver, ends up giving that candidate a ride. The scene hints at the hate that's in the taxi driver's heart. There's a nice quiet layer of anger in that scene, and I've got a love-hate affair with the whole picture. I love a couple of the performances, and the lurid photography of New York at night, and that throbbing background music's pretty good too. But I hated the last third of the movie. The violence is so strong, I ended up looking away from the film in more ways than one. Not only didn't I see some of the bloodletting, I began not to see the sense of the picture either. Roger?
Well, Gene, that's where you and I disagree, because it seems to me that what Scorsese is doing is looking not so much at the violence in the city as in the violence that's bottled up inside this person, and it's the kind of violence that we've seen in America, in assassins and snipers and so forth. I think it's a very good character portrait. At the end, in particular, where he uses slow motion in order to make the violence really seem particular and drawn out and obsessive. I think it's a very good movie, and I think that, like Peckinpah's The Wild Bunch, the violence at the end is necessary in order to provide a conclusion to all of this pressure that's been building up all during the film.
I think that sounds good in theory, Roger, but when you end up looking away from the screen because a guy's getting fingers on his hand shot off, somebody else gets a bullet in the neck, and there's blood spattered all over the wall like some kind of modernistic painting, I think that the director is making his film, in a sense, bottom-heavy and blowing the sense that's preceded the picture out of the way. And I don't think it is necessary that the film end in a big piece of violence. I think that the relationship between the taxi driver and that girl could have been explored in a positive sense that would have been very exciting.
Well, I didn't look away from the screen, and I think that really what you're asking is that Scorsese had made a different movie than the one he made. In second place is Taxi Driver, Martin Scorsese's terrifying excursion into urban violence, which won first prize at this year's Cannes Film Festival. Robert De Niro plays a New York loner who plunges more and more deeply into his private madness, as we see in this clip. Taxi Driver, violent and important.
When we come back, our video pick of the week, a restored and re-released version of one of the classic movies of the last quarter century.
Our video pick this week, Martin Scorsese's 1976 movie Taxi Driver didn't win the Academy Award for Best Picture, but 20 years later, there was widespread agreement, I think, that it was one of the very best movies of the 1970s. It captured the mind of the kind of alienated urban loner who was to rewrite American history with senseless acts of violence, and it established Robert De Niro pretty securely as the leading actor of his generation. The movie starred a young Jodie Foster as a child of the streets, and De Niro as Travis Bickle, a Vietnam veteran now driving a taxi, who somehow casts himself as her savior. And here is one of the most famous movie scenes of all time. It wasn't written this way. Scorsese remembers that De Niro improvised by saying the same line in different ways, and the improvisation became the scene. For its 20th anniversary, Taxi Driver has been re-released with a restored print and a new stereo soundtrack, and it's going to be playing in selected theaters around the country. It's already opened in New York. Then this new version will be released on video. This is a masterpiece, and it's great to have it back in a new print.